Greetings from Washington, D.C. Peter Thomas here, General Counsel of the National Association for the Advancement of Orthotics and Prosthetics, NAAOP. Congress is back from its annual summer recess, and Congress is having a real tough time with some very, very hard issues. In particular, whether our country is going to wind up taking military action against Syria, and how the federal government is going to be funded after October 1st, when the current continuing resolution on appropriations for all the federal agencies runs out. That, including the increase in the debt ceiling that is coming due in mid-October, is preoccupying the time of our lawmakers and the President. And in that context, issues such as orthotics and prosthetics obviously get knocked down a peg in terms of importance and in terms of activity. However, there are developments occurring that we wanted to make sure you are aware of. The first involves NAAOP's signature legislative priority over the last several years, the Injured and Amputee Veterans Bill of Rights. The House VA Committee in particular has been particularly interested in trying to figure out ways to better prosthetic care for veterans. They've held hearings over the last 2 years, at least 3 of them. They've built the record that changes are needed. They've even entertained OIG reports within the VA to try to demonstrate some of the things that could be done to improve prosthetic care. But they haven't legislated. They haven't acted. They did, in fact, pass the VA Bill of Rights, H.R. 805, back in December of 2010. But last year, but unfortunately the Senate did not act because they adjourned about 10 days after that law was passed, or that bill was passed. So the Veterans Bill of Rights still exists as legislation, and we're seeking to introduce it again in the House and to ultimately gain some co-sponsors and to finally get the bill passed for the benefit of veterans. And what the Bill of Rights does essentially is inform veterans of their rights and expectations of VA prosthetic care, and allows them to be their own best advocate in getting access to the technology that meets their needs, appropriate prosthetic technology, and to the provider who meets their needs, whether or not that provider of prosthetic care is within the VA or has a contract with the VA or has a relationship with the veteran amputee. We're working to try to get that legislation introduced. We expect to have some new information in the near future, and we'll be calling on you to try to contact your member of Congress to see if you can get them to co-sponsor the legislation. The second issue I wanted to mention was the e-clinical template for lower limb prostheses. This is something that came out of the last 2 years of RAC reviews and audits and claims denials for lower limb prostheses. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, has in mind to move forward with the design and implementation of a clinical electronic template for primarily physician use, so that physicians will know the kinds of medical information and conditions that patients have that may or may not impact the ambulation and functional status of amputees who are Medicare beneficiaries in need of prosthetic care. The problem is that the template is way too medical. It doesn't adequately capture functional status or potential of the individual, and it really is designed for physicians alone. It further undercuts the value of prosthetic and prosthetist's notes and clinical records, and really does not do a good enough job in terms of incorporating the prosthetist into the process of medical necessity and determining medical necessity of prosthetic care under Medicare. So CMS has held 3 separate open door forums to gain perspectives from individuals and organizations on the outside. NAAOP has been an active participant in those, both individually and in concert with the O&P Alliance. There's been a number of NAAOP members, individuals who have submitted comments and have gotten on those open door forum phone calls and made the case. More to follow, but essentially that template process appears to be winding down, and it appears that CMS is probably going to wind up implementing something whether they adopt some of the comments they've received or not. We're going to continue to do all we can do to try to improve that template to the maximum extent possible, all the while advocating that the template really is poorly designed. It really needs to be a set of factors that prosthetists record in terms of functional status rather than physicians recording medical conditions of the patient. So we'll continue to keep you informed as we move forward, and thanks so much for listening.